Welcome to another episode. We're now on episode 4 of the Rambam Maimonides Hilchot of Character Development. It's been an absolutely fascinating series so far, and we'd like to dedicate this episode in memory of my father, Yehuda ben Moshe Esther, Michael's father, Levi ben Moshe Esther, and Michael's sister, who is Elisheva Yael bat Leah Levi. So without further ado, over to Michael.
Thank you, Rabbi Mashiach. In this chapter 4, Rambam gives a full physical regimen that one should follow in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Rambam, how he quotes, Darchei Hashem. He, a lot of commentators think this is wrong because they say Darchei Hashem is a mental attitude. It's a mental thing, but Rambam disagrees, and he suggests that looking after your body is also following in the ways of Hashem. So now, why should we? How was Rambam qualified to submit this list of suggestions? He was a master physician, as we know. He was eventually worked up to be the physician, the royal physician of Saladin, who was the kind of emperor of Egypt at the time. We're talking 12th century. I think he was appointed to the post in 1170. So Rambam was 36 years old, very, very young. And you consider also the genius of Rambam that he started writing the Mishneh Torah. It took him 10 years to write, and he finished it when he was 39. And he was obviously about 29 when he started writing the Mishneh Torah. So imagine what a genius he was. What were we doing at 29, 30 years old? Yeah. So he's composing this approximately maybe the summer of his 30th year. He's composing this Hilchot De'ot. And he's already an expert in the workings of the human body. And don't forget, in that time, infections were rife, food wasn't kept for long, so you would get ill probably very quickly. People's life expectancy was very short. And for him, first of all, to be writing the Mishneh Torah, at the same time, he was a physician to the king and his family and his concubines. So Rambam apparently famously wrote about his day. He would wake up early in the morning. It would take him an hour. He used to live in a suburb of Cairo, and he used to go to the palace. To take him an hour to get there, stay there all day, return an hour later exhausted, immediately tend to his Gentile and Jewish population by handing out prescriptions and analysing their cases as a doctor. And only at very, very late at night, he said he would collapse in bed, unable to talk.
Wow.
And at that point, he would continue compiling his Mishneh Torah. What a man. How he found the energy and time to do this is just incredible.
Siyata D'Shmaya.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Proof of Hashem.
Yes. So, in this chapter, Rambam describes how one should eat, sleep, exercise, bathe, and various other things. What you should avoid eating, what you should eat, and how to keep yourself physically in tip-top shape. Now, his idea, his famous quote of his is, "Anticipate charity by preventing poverty." In itself is a fantastic philosophy. So he is right. He is taking intentions to a higher level thought possible. He's saying, avoid giving charity, avoid giving a mitzvah by doing the really correct thing, which is preventing poverty. Right? So he applies this in a similar way to his doctorate's philosophy. He says, anticipate surgery by preventing illness. Rambam was famous in holistic medicine, in preventing. Prevention is better than the cure. So this is interesting that He's a royal physician who was apparently also in high demand. Richard the Lionheart also wanted his servants, wanted him to be, yes, it was recorded that he wanted to be his physician as well. So a very famous physician. Now, Rambam, the greatness of Rambam also shows in his approach to medicine, where he would rather anticipate illness by keeping your body healthy, keeping your immune system at the highest possible preventative state. So, for example, he was given the post of royal physician at age 36 in 1170. He has now become defender of the realm. And if you imagine that Saladin, who was apparently, what I've read about him, he seemed to be quite an ethical king. Apparently, he was involved in many, many battles, and all of the spoils of riches and the spoils of war he would give to the people. In fact, he has commanded a very large swathes of territory and took all of the spoils of war, but distributed them to all his subjects. Mm-hmm. In the end, when he died, he had only 1 piece of gold and 40 pieces of silver, not enough to bury himself.
What?
And this was a king who gave all of his riches to his subjects. So he must have been a pretty ethical person. Now, to be a royal physician as a man is a huge responsibility. So you have to be at the top of your game to be a royal physician, because the health of the king, if you mess up once, you're in big trouble. But he never messed up. In fact, the famous story goes that Saladin said to him, and jokingly, I guess, how do I know how good a doctor you are? Because I've never been ill. You've never done anything for me. It's like I imagine it, the king, you can compare his body to be like the castle of the king. And whereas other royal physicians perhaps would have showed off their skill in surgery by, if the guy got ill and needed surgery, he would, as you imagine with a castle, it's been breached by an infection or something, that he would perhaps do the surgery and then say to the king, look how well I plugged up the breach in your castle, in your body, like how well I performed surgery in your body. Rambam was acting at a high level. He, instead of showing off his surgery skills, decided to build a moat around the castle, which was the king, and he would send his defences in advance in the fields around the castle, the king, to limit any contact of any infection or any need for surgery. So his philosophy, like anticipate charity by preventing poverty, was anticipate surgery by preventing illness or infection. So we can begin. So halacha aleph, hoyil v'hehios haguf buri v'sholem b'darkei Hashem hu. Since maintaining a healthy and sound body is among the ways of God, he's saying Darkei Hashem also involves physically looking after your body. It's not just a ethical. Darkei is not just following Hashem's ways mentally. Also physically you have to. For one cannot understand or have any knowledge of the Creator if he is ill. לפיכך צריך להרחיק אדם עצמו מדברים המאבדים את הגוף. Therefore he must avoid that which harms the body. ולהנהיג עצמו בדברים המעבירים והמחללים. And accustom himself to which is healthy and helpful for the body to become stronger. And he continues, ואלו הן לעולם לא יאכל אדם אלא כשהוא רעב. And there are as follows, the suggestions. A person should never eat unless he is hungry. So you shouldn't eat out of boredom. You shouldn't eat because you're depressed. You shouldn't eat for any other reason other than you're hungry, which it makes a lot of sense. Lo yishte elo kashehu tzameh, nor drink unless you are thirsty. Ve'al yesheh nekavav afilu rega echad. He should never put off relieving himself or going to the toilet even for an instance. Ella kol zaman shetzarech la'ashtin or lahatzech et raglav ya'amod miyad. Rather, whenever he feels a need to urinate or evacuate his bowels, he should do so immediately. Halacha base 2. Lo yachal adam ad shitmale kuroto. One should not eat until his stomach is full. Ella yiftoch kamo revi mishivato. Rather, he should stop when he is eaten close to 3/4 of a full satisfaction. So don't eat until your belly is full. Eat until you're 75% full, which makes a hell of a lot of sense. Because sometimes you've eaten until you're full, but you're actually eating too much. Sometimes you eat within your means, 75%. When you leave the table, you're actually full. But also, it's an intelligent thing to do, not to overwork your digestive system, and it probably promotes a little bit of weight loss as well, because you don't stuff yourself to satiation.
Yeah. There's another thing that the body is 20 minutes behind the brain. So when you eat something, you could be full, and you won't feel that you're full for 20 minutes. So you're still gorging and gorging and gorging. And then you realise, it hurts, whatever. That's because your brain is telling you. So you should always try. Don't eat, like you said, till you're full. You always.
But that's also what you said. Very interesting, because I heard a dietitian who said that your body, like you say, your body registers 20 minutes when you first start chewing your first mouthful. Yeah. It's for 20 minutes it desires food. It tells you eat. If you make your meal last 20 minutes, it doesn't matter how much you have on your plate, your stomach, you will feel full. As long as you make it last, your meal lasts 20 minutes. And, so it's very important. Next time you have a smaller dish, if you make your meal last 20 minutes, you'll feel full as if you were eating a full, massive dish in 10 minutes. So that's interesting what you're saying. It follows the same thing.
Wow, you get everything on this shit.
But I also invite, if any nutritionists are listening, any comments would be very, very appreciated, because a lot of these things I'd be interested to know how relevant they are in the medical community today. How you'll hear a lot of these suggestions that you make. I'd like to hear if you agree with them. So if you want to comment or write in, it would be very interesting to hear.
Just to let you know, the email address is, email it to me or to you?
To you.
So it's rabbikalati@gmail.com, rabbikalati@gmail.com, and we will forward them on to Michael.
Okay, so Rambam continues. V'lo yishte mayim betoch hamazon ela al ma'at u'mazug bayayin. One should drink only a small amount of water during the meal and mix that with wine. וכשيתחיל המזון להתאכל במעיו שותה מה שהוא צריך לשתות. When the food begins to be digested in his intestines, he may drink what is necessary. ולא ירבה לשתות מים אפילו כשיתאכל המזון. However, he should not drink too much water even when the food has been digested. And he continues, Rambam continues, ולא יאכל עד שיבדוק עצמו יפה שמה יהיה צריך לנקביו. One should not eat until he has checked himself thoroughly that he does not need to relieve himself. לא יאכל אדם עד שיהלך קודם אכילה עד שיתחל גופו לחום. He should not eat until he has taken a stroll or a walk which is sufficient to raise his body temperature. או יעשה מלאכתו או יתאגע ביגע אחר. Alternatively, he should work or exert himself in some other way. So it seems like you have to raise your body temperature perhaps before eating or perhaps at certain times of the day. כללו של דבר יענה גופו ויגע כל יום בבוקר עד שיתחל גופו לחום. The general rule is that he should engage his body and exert himself in a sweat-producing task each morning. So Rambam is suggesting a small workout in the morning just to get your blood flowing, and you should you do it to a point that you're breaking sweat. Afterwards, he should rest slightly until he regains his composure, and only after then he should eat. הרי זה טוב ואחר כך שיוהה מעט ואוכל. If he's able to bathe in hot water after he exerts himself, it is extra beneficial. Afterwards, he should wait a short while and eat. So he's saying, if you can work out, that's the main thing, and then eat. But if you can work out and then have a hot bath, that's the best. So, halacha gimel, halacha 3. Le'olam kashe'achal adam yeshev bimkomo or yiteh al simol. One should always eat while seated or reclining on his left side. V'lo yahalech v'lo yukav lo yiga v'lo yezazev gufo. He should not walk about, ride, exert himself, or subject his body to startling influence. Lo yita'el ad sheyita'akel hamazon shebeme'av. Nor take a stroll until the food has been digested in his intestines. V'chol hama'atiel acha achiloto o sheyaga hareze mevi al atzmo chalaim ra'im v'kasha'im. Anyone who takes a stroll or exerts himself after eating brings serious and harmful illnesses upon himself. So in the beginning of this halacha, he talks about one should eat reclining on his left side. As I understand, leaning to your left side is better for your reflux. I think if you lean to your right side, you provoke acid reflux because you get some spillage into your stomach or something like that. I was always told in order to avoid acid reflux, sleep on your left, but also lean to your left. Okay.
Like you do on Pesach.
On Pesach, exactly. So halacha 4. Hayom v'halayla kuf dalet sha'ot. Together, day and night make up a period of 24 hours. Here we're talking about sleep. Dai lo la'adam lishon shlishon shuhu shmona sha'ot. It is sufficient and is correct for a man to sleep a third of this period, which is 8 hours. So one must get 8 hours sleep a night. And when should these 8 hours begin and end? V'yihu b'sof halayla k'dei shetiyeh matchilat shnato ad sheta'aleh hashemesh shmone sha'ot. These should be towards the end of the night, so that there be 8 hours from the beginning of his sleep until sunrise. So you take an average time of the year of around 6 a.m. for sunrise. You would have to say you would have to go to bed at 10 o'clock, he's suggesting, to be up at sunrise, which makes a lot of sense. They say early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy and wise. Here Rambam is saying early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, holy and wise.
Yeah. Doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. So, v'nimtza omed mimitaso kodem sheta'aleh hashemesh. Thus he should rise from his bed before sunrise. So, halacha 5. Lo yishan adam lo al panav v'lo al arpo ela al tzado. So he's talking about how you should sleep. One should not sleep face down or on his back, but on his side. This is interesting because I read something about this where you have a slightly, don't quote me on this, but you have a slightly increased risk of heart problems if you sleep on your back or definitely on your stomach. It's strongly suggested that you don't. It seems like perhaps the best position is what he's about to suggest. But chilat halayla ad sad simol, v'uchosof halayla ad sad yamin. On his left side at the beginning of the night, and on the right side at the end of the night. V'lo yishan samuch la'achila ela yamatin acha achila kamo shlosh o arba sha'ot. V'lo yishan bayom. You should not retire. You should not go to bed shortly after eating, but should wait some 3 or 4 hours. And he also says a person should not sleep during the day. I think you have extended naps during the day or a certain clump of sleep. It'll ruin your circadian rhythm, so it'll spoil your night's sleep. Halacha 6. Dvarim hamshalshin et b'nei meim kagon anavim. Laxative foods such as grapes, utainim, figs, v'tsusim, mulberries, v'agasim, and pears, v'avatichim, and melons, u'minei ha'kshuim, and certain types of cucumbers, or minei malafafanot, ochel otam ha'adam batchila kodam achila. And certain types of zucchini should be eaten first before the meal. So in advance of the meal, certain foods that are likely to have a laxative effect, such as the ones mentioned, should be eaten before the meal. V'lo ya'arvem im hamazon. One should not eat them together with his main meal. Ela sheyohem ma'at ad sheyitzu miveten ha'elyanon ve'ochel mizono. Rather, he should wait until they have descended from his upper stomach and then eat his meal. Udvarim shima'amitzin et b'nei ha'me'aim kagon v'monim v'uprishim. Foods that are constipating, such as pomegranates, quinces, tapuchim and apples, crostomelin and crustomelian pears, ochel oten techef limzono, should be eaten immediately after the meal. V'lo yarbeh le'echol mehem, and you should not eat them in quantities. So foods, the Rambam is very careful about the idea of a healthy digestive and evacuative system. He believes that, to be constipated really is a terrible thing and it leads to problems. So he's suggesting foods that can be laxative, and he's warning about foods that are constipative, if that's the right word. So halacha 7. K'shiyutze adam le'echol basa of vasa behema ke'echad. A person who desires to eat poultry and meat in one sitting, ochel batchila b'sa ha'of, should eat the poultry, the chicken, first. V'chein beitzim uvsa of ochel batchila beitzim. Similarly, if he desires to eat both eggs and poultry, he should eat the eggs first. B'sar behema daka uv'sar behema gasa ochel batchila b'sar daka. If he desires to eat both meat of a large cattle and that of a small cattle, he should eat the meat of the small cattle first. Le'olam yakdim adam dvar hakal u'ma'acher hakaved. He should always eat the lighter fare first and the heavier fare afterwards. So if there's a sheep and a cow, he should eat the sheep first before the cow. Halacha 8. Bimot hachama, in the summer, ochel ma'achlim hakraim, one should eat unseasoned food. This probably means without spices. Velo yarbe batavalim, without many spices. Ochel et hachometz, and he should use vinegar. Uvimot hagashamim ochel ma'achalim hachamim. And in the rainy season, one should eat seasoned foods, as in perhaps spicy foods, or he was Sephardi, so maybe with some sort of curry. Umarbe batvalim ve'ochel ma'at min ha'chardal or min ha'chlatit. Chiltit, and use many spices and eat some mustard and chiltis. Now, chiltis is a herb that was, I think, was quite spicy, and I think the English name for this is asafoetida. Asafoetida,
yeah. It's a very common spice.
Okay. Oh, you have it here?
Wow,
very nice.
Shame you can't see it, but anyway, trust me.
Al derech zu holech ve'oseh b'makomot hakraim uv'makomot hachamim v'chol makom haru'u lo. One should follow these principles in regard to cold climates and hot climates, whereas choosing the correct food, the appropriate food, appropriate to each and every one of them. So, halacha tes. Yesh ma'achalot shehem ra'im biyoter ad ma'od v'ro'u la'adam shelo la'achlan la'olam. There are foods which are extremely harmful, and it is proper that one should never eat them. Kugon, for example, hadagim, hagdolim, hamlochim, v'hashanim, large fish that are aged and salted. But bear in mind that this times, to preserve food, one had to salt and age and dry most food. There's no refrigeration. So this was, but he was warning against these sort of things. And Rambam continues, V'hagvina hamlocha hayshana, cheese which is aged and salted. Is perhaps he's promoting some sort of vegan thing. He's saying no cheese, no fish. And he continues, V'hakmehin or pitriots, truffles and mushrooms, v'habasar hamaleach hayashan, and meat which is aged and salted. He's saying these you should avoid. V'yayin b'kitor, wine from the press, which is fresh from the press. V'tavshil shehahar ad shenadaf recho, cooked foods which has been left over until it produces an odor. So if it has a bad odor, you must avoid it. V'chein kol ma'achal shurichora or ma beyoter, harei elu laguf kumo tsam hamaves. And any food which has a bad smell or a very bitter taste, these are like poison to the body. And Rambam continues, V'esh ma'achalot shehen ra'im aval einan kumo harishonim l'ra. There are other foods which are harmful, but their harmful effects do not compared to those just previously mentioned. Therefore, a person ought to eat them only sparingly and after intervals of many days. He should not eat them regularly as his main dish or main meal, or constantly as a side dish with his food. And Rambam continues with Halacha Dalet 4. Kagon, Dagim Gdolim Vina V'halach Shashaha Acha Shan Chalav Kuf Dalet Sha'ot. These are large fish, cheese and milk which has been left over for more than 24 hours after the milking. Uvasa Shvarim Gdolim, and meat of large oxen, usyashin gdolim, or he goats, v'hapol, horse beans, v'hadasim, lentils, v'hasapir, chickpeas, or lechem sha'orim, or barley bread, v'lechem matzot, and matzot, v'kruv, cabbage, v'hechatzir, leeks, v'haptzalim, onions, v'hashumim, garlic, v'hacharodal, and mustard, v'hatzanovon, and radishes. So he's mentioning food that you should avoid. Some of these today seem quite healthy, but this is what Rambam is suggesting. And Rambam continues. Kol elu ma'achlim ra'im hem. All of these are harmful foods. Einu ra'u la'adam le'echol ma'elu ela ma'at ad ma'od uvimos hagashim. It is fitting that he should eat them very sparingly and only in the rainy season. Aval b'yimot hachama lo ya'achol mehem klal. Abstaining entirely in the summer. V'hapol v'ha'adasim b'lvad eino ra'u la'achlan lo b'mot hachama v'lo b'mot hagashim. Of these, horse beans and lentils alone should not be eaten either in the summer or winter. V'had lo'in ochlin mehen b'mot hachama. But the squash, the vegetable squash, may be eaten in the summer season. And he continues in Halacha 10. V'yesh ma'achalot shehem ra'im v'einon kumo elu. And there are foods which are harmful, but less so than these. V'hem of hamayim, and they are waterfowl. Uvnei yonah haktanim, young pigeons. V'hatmarim, dates. V'lechem kal'um b'shemen, bread which is roasted in oil, or lechem shenilosh b'shemen, v'hasalet shenifpo ota kol tzuracha ad shelo, or bread kneaded in oil and flour which has been sifted so well that no bran is left. So he's very modern in his thinking. This is processed flour, processed food. This is white bread he's talking about. He's saying flour which has been sifted so well, no goodness is left, no bran is left. Nis'ara ba reach musran v'hatzir v'hamurayam einam ra'u laharbot ma'achalot elu. And fish brine and also pickled fish oil, he's saying they're reasonably harmful. They ought to not be eaten in any quantity. V'adam shehu chacham v'kovesh es yitzra v'lo yimasech el achat avoto. Any man who is wise, who overcomes his desires, is not drawn by his appetites, ולא יאכל מן הזכרים כלום, אלא אם נצרך להם לרפואה, הרי זה גיבור, and eats nothing of the above mentioned, the aforementioned, unless he needs them for medical reason, is indeed heroic. So he's applying a very, serious thing. He's calling you a hero if you can follow these things and follow his suggestions. And it is, when you think about it, is heroic, because a lot of things that we avoid, we do because we know they're very bad for us. But a lot of these things you may think, what's the harm? I'm eating these foods. Can it really do me that harm? I really want to eat, I'm hungry, I really would like to eat that. But he's saying, look, trust me, abstain from these, you'll improve your health drastically, you'll avoid illnesses. So really, it takes he regards it as a heroic act to avoid what you don't think is bad for you. But just trust him on this, because he's a very learned physician that perhaps had Ruach HaKodesh or Ruach Hashem when it comes to these unusual discoveries about food, which obviously worked because he was one of the most successful physicians of the time. And Rambam continues. Leolam nimne adam atzmo beperos ha'elanot. One should always avoid fruits. V'lo yarbe mehen va'afilu yevashin. He should not eat of them in quantity even when it is dried. Ve'en tzorech lomar retuvim. And it goes without saying when they are fresh. Aval kodem she'itbalshlu kol tzurachan heru hen b'charvot laguf. When they are not sufficiently ripe, they are like swords to the body. V'chein hacharuvim ra'im le'olam. Carobs too are always harmful. So this is slightly unusual. He's suggesting that fruits of any types, even of dried or fresh, or even kal v'chomer if it's unripe, are bad for you. I can only assume that this is for the sugar content. In his medical works he had written about diabetes and about depression, but one of the things he realized that people who overconsumed sweet fruits perhaps lent themselves towards perhaps developing diabetes. This is the only thing that I can think of, because we know the fruits are quite healthy for you. And he continues, V'chol haperos hachamutzin ra'im ve'en ochlim mehen elo ma'at bimot hachama uvamkomot hachamim. All pickled fruits are harmful and should be eaten only sparingly in summer weather and in hot climates. V'hata'anim v'ha'anavim v'akshedim le'olam tovim ben retuvim ben yuvashin. And he says figs, grapes and almonds are always beneficial, both fresh and dried. He's suggesting that these figs, grapes and almonds are extremely good for you. Don't worry about them. One may eat of them as much as he requires. However, he should not eat them constantly, even though they are the most beneficial of fruits. And we're going to conclude this episode, which is only halfway through this quite long perek. This is halacha 12, Hadvash v'hayayin ra lekatanim v'yafa lezakenim. Honey and wine are harmful to the young and wholesome, good for the old. V'chol sheken bimos hagashamim. Certainly this applies in the rainy season. V'tzarech adam le'echol bimot hachama shnei shlishim ma shehu achel bimot hagashamim. In summer, one should eat 2/3 of what he eats in the winter. So, obviously you want to eat more in the winter because you want to keep your body temperature up and it's the energy that you receive. But you should eat 66% of what you eat in the winter in the summer. So, interesting suggestions from Rambam that he's telling us what to eat, what not to eat, how to sleep, what positions to sleep. We're going to split this perek into 2 episodes, so this is where we're going to leave it for today. And I hope you found this very interesting. And any comments would be appreciated regarding the technicalities of these Rambam's instructions.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. That was very interesting. And next week, Bezrat Hashem, we'll have part 2 of this, which was the fourth perek. And see you then.